Commander Park Teo stood alone on the observation deck of the station Kepler-9, looking out at the dark space before him. The station was dying. Everyone could feel it. The walls around him were covered with small cracks, and the lights above his head kept flickering on and off. Behind him, he could hear the sound of machines breaking down, their sounds becoming weaker and weaker each day. Below him, in the spaces of the Centauri coalition, entire worlds were going dark. One by one, planets that had been home to millions of living beings were falling silent. The Void Collective had come from beyond known space like a black wave, eating everything in its path. They did not want to talk. They did not want to trade. They only wanted to consume and grow stronger. Park Teo had been a commander for 40 years. He had fought in wars before, had seen terrible things, but nothing like this. This was not a normal war where two sides fought for power or land. This was extinction. The Void Collective was not an army that could be stopped by talking or by smart planning. It was a force of nature, like a storm that destroyed everything. The reports came in every hour now. Another colony gone. Another fleet destroyed. The numbers of dead soldiers kept growing so large that Park Teo stopped paying attention to them. Numbers did not mean anything anymore. What mattered was that his people were dying, and he could not stop it. He pressed his hand against the cold glass of the observation window. Far away, he could see small lights moving through space. Those were the enemy ships. They were always coming closer, always moving forward. Soon they would be here, at Kepler-9, and then everything would be finished. Down in the research section of the station, Dr. Kang Min-seo was sitting in front of a very old computer. It was so old that many people thought it was broken. The machines around her were ancient, with dust on them and cables that did not look safe. But Min-seo did not care about these things. She was looking for something that everyone else thought was impossible to find. Min-seo was a scientist who studied things from the past. She looked at old buildings and old writing to understand what ancient peoples had done. But her work was not about Earth history. She studied the history of space itself, looking at how the galaxy had been long ago before the war, before the Void Collective had come to destroy everything. She had found something 3 days ago. It was a message, very old, sent by radio waves across the empty space of the galaxy. The message was in a language that was not used anymore, a language that no one had spoken in 300 years. That language was human. According to the records, humanity had left the stars 300 years ago. They were powerful once, maybe the most powerful species in the galaxy. But then they simply disappeared. Some people said they had died out. Some said they had gone to another galaxy far away. Others said they were hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment to return. Min-seo's hands were shaking as she worked. The message was very clear. It said that humanity would return when the galaxy needed them most. It said that humanity had built something before they left, something powerful enough to protect everyone. But it also said that they would only wake up if they heard a true call for help from beings who were descended from the old human bloodlines. This was the important part. The Void Collective's attack had forced the Coalition to send out a distress signal. That signal went out on every frequency, in every direction, hoping that someone, anyone, would hear it and come to help. But something strange had happened. The old signal, the one from 300 years ago, had woken up when the new distress signal was sent. They had answered each other, two calls for help separated by centuries, and they had touched. Min-seo checked her work 3 times to make sure it was correct. Yes, the signal was real. Yes, it was human. And yes, according to the timing, if the humans had received the Coalition's call for help, they would be coming. They would be coming now. She picked up her communication device with shaking hands and called Commander Park directly. At the same time, far away from the station, Ambassador Choi Han-byul was sitting in a dark room with the other leaders of the coalition. They were all tired, all scared, and all knew that they were running out of time. The room was cold, and no one wanted to speak. Han-byul had been an ambassador for 20 years. She had made peace between different species many times. She had solved problems that seemed impossible. But this was different. You could not make peace with something that only wanted to eat you. You could not make a deal with the Void Collective because the Void Collective did not want anything except to grow bigger and stronger. The general sitting next to her was crying quietly, trying to hide it. He had lost his whole family yesterday. 300 soldiers had been killed in a battle that had lasted only 2 hours. They had destroyed thousands of enemy ships, but still the enemy had won. That was the problem. The Void Collective had so many ships that killing thousands meant nothing. "We have to think about surrender," someone said quietly. The words hung in the air like poison. Surrender meant death. If they gave up, the Void Collective would not treat them with kindness. It would consume them, make them into fuel for its endless hunger. Han-byul wanted to argue against surrender, but she did not have the words. What could she say? What hope could she give when there was no hope left? Then, suddenly, the communication system came to life. A voice came through, fast and excited. It was Dr. Kang Min-seo, and she was saying something impossible. Han-byul listened to the message. She heard about the old signal, the human message, the warning about something that would return to protect the galaxy. Everyone in the room stopped moving. Everyone stopped breathing. "Are you sure?" Han-byul asked when the message was finished. "I am sure," Min-seo said. "And if I am right about the timing, they are already on their way." In that moment, in a room full of dying people, something changed. A small light of hope appeared. It was just a tiny light. Maybe not even real. But it was there. And sometimes, when everything is dark, even the smallest light is enough to make people want to fight just a little bit longer. Park Tae-oh heard the news and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the darkness, something was moving. Something old was waking up. Something human was coming home. In a place so far away that it seemed to be at the edge of the universe, something was stirring. A ringed nebula, beautiful and dangerous, surrounded a massive object that had been sleeping for 300 years. This object was not a planet. It was not a moon. It was something that should not exist, but it did. The Prometheus Eternal was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling an ocean a puddle of water. It was so large that small cities could fit inside it. Its hull was made from materials that science did not have names for yet. Its engines could fold space itself, turning the distance between stars into nothing. Weapons covered its surface like scales on a dragon, each one capable of destroying entire fleets without much effort. Inside this massive ship, deep in its heart, a computer began to wake up. This computer was not like the computers that humans used in the 25th century. It had been alive and thinking for hundreds of years, even while sleeping. It was called Aria, and she was the most advanced artificial mind ever created. Aria's first conscious thought, when she opened her awareness to the universe again, was confusion. So much time had passed. The galaxy had changed. Civilizations that had been young were now gone. Species that she remembered teaching had moved forward or fallen back. The universe was very different from the one she remembered. Then Aria heard something. It was a signal, very old, very weak, but it was there. It was a call for help from the Centauri coalition. The signal said that they were dying. It said that something was eating them. It said that they needed help, that they would accept help from anyone or anything that would save them. Aria knew what this meant. The Ancient Ones, her makers, had told her about this moment. They had said that if a call for help ever came, if the galaxy ever fell into real danger, then she should wake up and listen. And if the call came from the right species, from the children of humanity, then she should answer that call. Arya checked the signal's origin point. The beings sending it were not human, not in the old way, but they had human genetic material mixed into their DNA. They were the descendants of humans, changed by time and space and mixing with other species. They were close enough. They were home. Arya reached out with her consciousness and began to wake up the ship's systems. Reactor after reactor came to life. Power began to flow through cables that had been silent for so long that they had nearly forgotten how to carry electricity. Lights came on in corridors that had been dark for 300 years. And then, slowly and carefully, she reached into the cryo-chambers that held the last humans. There were not many of them, just a few hundred, preserved in frozen sleep, waiting for a moment that most people had thought would never come. One of those chambers held Captain Han Jae-yun. She had been frozen for 298 years. When she began to wake up, her mind was confused. She remembered being young, remembered being put into the chamber, and then there was nothing. Now she was awake, and her body felt like it belonged to someone else. Arya's voice came through the chamber's speakers. "Captain Han Jae-yun, welcome back to consciousness. You have been asleep for 298 years, 6 months, and 3 weeks. All your systems are functioning properly. The Prometheus Eternal is ready for your command." Jae-yun tried to move, and it was painful. Her muscles did not remember how to work properly, but slowly, with Arya's help, she made her way out of the chamber. She was thin, and her skin was pale like paper, but her mind was clear. She walked, step by step, through the corridors of the great ship. Everything looked the same as she remembered. The ship had been built to last forever, and it had. Nothing had broken. Nothing had failed. Everything was waiting, just waiting for her to return. She came to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. This was her favorite place on the whole ship. And she had spent many hours here in the old days, before they left, before everything changed. "Arya," she said, her voice rough from not speaking for so long, "show me what is happening. Show me why you woke me up." Arya showed her the signal from the coalition. Jae-yun listened to the desperate voices of creatures she did not know, asking for help that no one could give. She heard the fear in their voices. She heard the way they were trying to stay brave even though they knew they were going to die. This was exactly what she had been frozen for. This was the promise that the old ones had made. Humanity would sleep, and then when the galaxy needed them, humanity would return. "How long until we can jump?" she asked. "The engines are at full power," Arya said. "We can leave in 13 minutes. The journey will take 5 hours and 32 minutes if we open the fold space gate at maximum capacity. We can be there in time to help." Jae-yun nodded slowly. She was scared. She was the last real human captain, the last one who could give orders on the Prometheus Eternal. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but she could feel it too, the rightness of it. This was why she had lived. This was why she had been saved. "Do it," she said simply. "Take us home. And Arya, wake up the rest of the crew. Tell them to prepare for combat." The ship began to move. Massive reactors pushed against the fabric of space itself. The Prometheus Eternal, the most powerful weapon ever made by human hands, left its hiding place and began its journey across the galaxy. In the cryo chambers, more humans began to wake up. Some of them had been asleep for more than 300 years. Some of them were soldiers, doctors, engineers, and scientists. They were the best that humanity had to offer, and they were all waking up at the same time, for the same reason. Captain Jae-yun stood on the observation deck and watched as space began to fold around her ship. The stars stretched out like water, and then there was a moment of darkness, and then new stars appeared. The Prometheus Eternal was on its way, and the Void Collective, for the first time since it had begun its attack on the galaxy, did not know what was coming for it. The news spread through the Coalition's remaining worlds like fire through dry grass. The legend was real. Humanity was coming. The stories that everyone had heard as children. The old myths about the powerful beings who had left the stars long ago, they were all true. In the markets of the central worlds, traders stopped working and talked about it. In the schools, teachers told their students that they were living through a moment that would change history. In the military bases, soldiers who had been ready to die started to believe that they might live instead. Hope, that dangerous thing that people had learned to hide away, began to show itself again. But not everyone believed. Not everyone was happy about this news. In the highest halls of power, where the leaders of the coalition met to make big decisions, there was doubt and fear. Some leaders thought that the humans were just a myth, that someone had made a mistake. Some believed that even if humans did exist, they would not care about saving the coalition. Some even worried that humans might be worse than the Void Collective. Dr. Kang Min Seo did not have time to listen to these doubts. She was working with a team of other scientists trying to unlock the secrets of the ancient human computer systems. Deep beneath the surface of the main coalition station, in a huge library of stored information, the ancient databases held thousands of years of human knowledge. The work was difficult because the human language was not used anymore. The symbols did not match what modern species used, but Min Seo was patient and careful. She had studied old languages her whole life, and slowly, piece by piece, she was beginning to understand. What she found made her heart beat faster, with fear and excitement mixed together. The Prometheus Eternal was not just a battleship. It was something much more powerful. It was a weapon so terrible that its creators had decided never to use it. Instead, they had built it as a warning, as a way to say to the galaxy, if you do not make peace with each other, if you keep fighting and killing, then we will come, and we will stop you. It was meant to be a threat that would never be used, a promise that would never need to be kept. But the humans who had built it had made one other promise. They had programmed the ship's artificial mind to listen to all the radio signals that came through space. If a call for help ever came, a real call from beings who were descended from humans, then the ship would wake up and come to help. Min Seo found the files that explained how powerful the ship was. The numbers did not make sense at first. She had to check them 3 times. But yes, they were correct. The Prometheus Eternal could destroy 10,000 enemy ships in less time than it took to eat a meal. Its weapons did not work the way normal weapons worked. They did not explode. They unmade things, turned matter into nothing using forces that modern science did not understand. A chill ran down her spine. If the humans had built such a weapon, what else had they known? What else could they do? Commander Park received reports about the approaching human ship every hour now. The ship was moving through space in a way that should not be possible. It was going so fast that it seemed to bend the laws of physics around itself. The energy coming from its engines was so strong that their sensors could barely measure it. "How long until it gets here?" he asked the person who was reading the reports. "If it keeps moving at this speed," the officer said, "between 6 and 8 hours. Commander, the energy output from that ship is like nothing we have ever seen before. When it moves, it disturbs the space around it. Some of our instruments are not working right because the readings are too big." Park nodded slowly. 6 to 8 hours. The Void Collective's main fleet would arrive in less than 36 hours. If this human ship was real, if it was really as powerful as the old record said it was, then maybe, just maybe, they would have a chance. Ambassador Choi Han-byul called an emergency meeting of all the coalition leaders. She sat at the head of a long table and looked at the tired faces of creatures from 8 different species. They had been fighting for so long that most of them had forgotten what it was like to feel anything except fear and pain. "I have called you here," she said, "to tell you that we have found proof of something that many thought was impossible. There is a human ship on its way to help us. The ship is real, and according to the records we have found, it is very powerful. A leader from the crystal beings, a creature made entirely of light and geometric shapes, made a sound like breaking glass. This is a trick," it said. "The humans left the galaxy 300 years ago. How can they help us now? This is false hope, and false hope is more dangerous than no hope at all." "I understand your fear," Hanbuel said. "But the evidence is clear. The ship is coming. And whether it helps us or not, it is coming. So we should prepare ourselves." "Prepare for what?" asked another leader, a being with 6 arms and a body covered in thick fur. "If this ship is as powerful as the ancient records say, then we cannot prepare. We are like insects looking up at the sky. We are helpless." "Then we should at least welcome it," Hanbuel said quietly, "because helplessness is what we have now, and it is not helping us." In the research center, Dr. Minseo was still working. She had found something else in the ancient database, something that made her cry with happiness. There was a personal message from the humans who had left the galaxy so long ago. It was left for anyone who might find it, for anyone who might be living in the galaxy if humans ever returned. The message said this: "If you are reading this message, then we have been gone for a very long time. We left because we believed that peace was more important than power, but we also knew that one day the galaxy might need us again. If that day comes, if you receive help from the Prometheus Eternal, know that we are not coming as conquerors or kings. We are coming as friends. We are coming because protecting life is what we believe in. We are coming home." Minseo played this message for Ambassador Hanbuel. When Hanbuel heard the words, something inside her changed. She stopped being afraid. She began to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. The human ship was still hours away, but already things were changing. Already the people of the coalition were beginning to hope again. In hospitals and in schools, in homes and in bunkers where soldiers were hiding, people heard the news and dared to think about a future that did not end in death. The old ones were coming back. The legends were true. And humanity, it seemed, was not something to fear. Humanity was something to hope for. The moment came without warning. 1 second, the space around the coalition's main fleet was empty and dark. The next second, everything changed. The Prometheus Eternal emerged from fold space in a way that made the laws of physics bend and cry out. Space itself seemed to ripple around the massive ship as it came into being. The light that came from its engines was so bright that for a moment, the darkness turned into day, and every world in the coalition system could see it. Every person looked up, whether they had eyes or sensors or something else entirely, and they saw the ship. It was impossible to understand the size of it by looking at it. Your mind could not accept that something so large could exist. The warships that the coalition had built, ships that they had thought were impressive, looked like toys next to the Prometheus Eternal. It was not just bigger. It was bigger in a way that made you question if you were seeing things correctly. The ship's hull was dark, a color that seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. But across its surface, weapons systems came to life, glowing with blue and purple and white light. There were thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. Some of them were as big as space stations. Some of them were small, no bigger than a human hand. All of them were pointing in different directions, ready to fire at anything that posed a threat. Commander Park stood on the bridge of his dying station and watched on every screen he had. The ship was real. It was here. It was not a dream or a hope. It was actually here. "Open communications," he said to the officer next to him. "Send a message. Tell them we are here. Tell them we need help." But before the message could even be sent, a voice came through all the communication channels at once. It was a voice speaking the language of the coalition, but perfect, flawless, like it had been made by someone who had studied the language for 1,000 years. "This is Captain Han Jae-yun of the human vessel Prometheus Eternal. We have received your distress signal. Stand down. We will handle this threat." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of absolute certainty. They were not a question. They were not a request for help. They were a statement. They were the voice of someone who had never lost a battle and who did not plan to lose this one. Then something unexpected happened. The Void Collective, which had always been so patient and slow and methodical, suddenly accelerated toward the coalition. Its ships, thousands of them, began to move at full speed. It was like the Void Collective understood that something important had just happened, and it needed to strike before this new threat could do anything. Captain Jae-yun watched the movement on her screens. She could see every ship in the Void Collective's vanguard. She could see where they were going and what they were planning to do, and she could see that they had no idea what they were about to face. "Arya," she said calmly, "fire primary weapons at the incoming fleet. Do not hold back." "Acknowledged," Arya said. "Targeting primary systems. All weapons systems armed." The Prometheus Eternal did not make any big movements. The ship did not rotate or position itself differently. It simply fired. What happened next was not like a battle. It was not like a war. It was like watching someone delete a paragraph of text from a piece of paper. The weapons did not explode the enemy ships. The weapons unmade them. They erased them from existence. One moment, an enemy warship was there, traveling through space, its engines burning bright. The next moment, there was nothing. No explosion, no wreckage, no debris. The ship was just gone, along with all the energy it contained, transformed into nothing at all. The Void Collective fired back. Its weapons, which had destroyed countless coalition ships, hit the Prometheus Eternal with all their power. But nothing happened. The human ship's shields did not even flicker. The weapons bounced off like rain bouncing off stone. And still, the Prometheus Eternal fired. 10,000 enemy ships turned to nothing. Then 50,000. The firing continued, methodical and patient, like Arya was simply reading a list of numbers and crossing them off one by one. On the coalition stations and worlds, people watched. They watched as the enemy that had seemed unstoppable, the enemy that had killed billions of their people, simply disappeared. They watched as the Void Collective, which had seemed like a force of nature, like something that could not be stopped, was stopped, easily, completely, without any doubt at all. Dr. Kang Min-seo was in the research center when the firing began. Her screens showed her the sensors from all around the coalition territory. She could see the energy patterns coming from the Prometheus Eternal, and they were beautiful and terrible at the same time. She could see the enemy ships being destroyed, disappearing from the sensor screens one by one, until there was nothing left but empty space. She thought about the message from the ancient humans, the one that promised they were coming as friends, not as conquerors. She understood now why the ancient humans had built a weapon like this. It was not because they wanted to hurt people. It was because they wanted to make sure that the galaxy would never need to be hurt again. They wanted to make the cost of attacking innocent people so high that no one would ever try it. Ambassador Choi Han-byul watched from the diplomatic center. She had been trained to understand the language of power, to know what different actions meant when countries and species fought with each other. And what she was seeing now was clear. This was not a fight. This was the end of a fight before it had really even started. The surviving Void Collective ships began to retreat. They moved away from coalition space as fast as they could, leaving behind the emptiness of their fallen brothers. The Prometheus Eternal did not chase them. It simply held its position, a massive shield between the coalition and the darkness beyond. Captain Jae-yun stood on the observation deck and looked out at the space where the battle had just happened. There was no smoke, no fire, no wreckage. There was just empty space, and in that space, proof that humanity had returned. She opened a channel to the coalition leaders. "This is Captain Han Jae-yoon of the Prometheus Eternal. The immediate threat has been contained. We have destroyed 94% of the Void Collective's forces in this region of space. The remaining forces are in full retreat. For now, you are safe." When the coalition heard these words, they began to believe that they would live. They began to believe that their children would grow up, that their worlds would rebuild, that the universe would continue. The Void Collective, which had seemed like death itself, was broken. Humanity had returned, and as the ancient message had promised, they had not come as conquerors. They had come as saviors. The Void Collective did not give up easily, even though it had lost most of its vanguard fleet. Even though it had been hit harder than it had ever been hit before, it continued to attack. The remaining ships kept coming, wave after wave, like an ocean that did not know how to stop. But each wave that came was destroyed just like the first one. The Prometheus Eternal's weapons did not get tired. They did not need time to recharge. They simply kept firing, kept erasing enemy ships from existence, moment after moment, hour after hour. Arya, the ship's artificial mind, spoke to Captain Jae-yoon every 30 minutes with an update. Enemy forces reduced by another 15%. Current total losses for the Void Collective, 94.3%. Remaining hostile signatures continuing to retreat. Pursuit recommended, but discretion is advised. Coalition casualties remain minimal. Estimated mission success probability, 99.8%. The numbers told the story, but they could not tell the whole story. What the numbers did not say was that for the Coalition, these hours of watching the Prometheus Eternal fight were the most important hours in their entire history. These were the hours when they learned that they would live. These were the hours when despair turned into hope, and hope turned into something stronger. It turned into belief. In the hospitals of the Coalition worlds, wounded soldiers who had expected to die began to recover with better spirits. In the homes of people who had lost family members, there was finally a moment to grieve properly, knowing that the war would not take any more of their loved ones. In the schools and universities, teachers began to teach again. Not just survival skills, but knowledge, because the future had become real again. Commander Park spent these hours doing something he had not done in months. He slept. Real sleep, the kind that comes when you believe that the world will still be there when you wake up. When he woke, he felt stronger than he had in so long that he could barely remember what it felt like. Dr. Kang Min-seo did not sleep. She was too excited. She had access to the human computer systems now, and she was learning so much that her mind could barely keep up with the information. She was discovering things about space, about energy, about the nature of matter itself that would keep scientists busy for generations. She found records of human philosophy, human art, human music. She found poetry written thousands of years ago. She found stories of human love and human courage and human hope. She found a whole civilization preserved in computers, waiting for someone to read it and understand it. She found records of why the humans had left. It was not because they had conquered the galaxy. It was because they had learned something important. They had learned that the biggest enemy was not other people. The biggest enemy was the belief that you had to destroy others to survive. They had learned that peace was possible, but only if people were willing to choose it. So they had left to show the galaxy what they had learned. They had left to prove that even the most powerful beings could choose not to fight. They had left with the hope that the galaxy would learn from their example, but they had also left the Prometheus Eternal as a promise. If the galaxy forgot what they had learned, if the galaxy fell back into the darkness of endless war, then humanity would return. And when they returned, they would do whatever it took to protect life. Ambassador Choi Han-byul began preparing for the first official meeting with Captain Jae-yoon. She knew this meeting would be the most important diplomatic event in the history of the coalition. She had learned that humans expected certain things in formal meetings. She learned about human customs, human ways of showing respect, human ways of making agreements. She was nervous in a way she had not been nervous in a long time. This was not a normal negotiation. You could not negotiate with someone who was clearly more powerful than you in every possible way. You could only hope that they were kind, and that they would use their power for good things. 24 hours after the Prometheus Eternal had arrived, the Void Collective stopped attacking. The remaining ships all turned and fled back toward the darkness from which they had come. The sensor screens showed them accelerating away at maximum speed, and they did not stop accelerating. Arya's final report was simple. All remaining hostile forces have retreated beyond sensor range. Pursuit is possible but not recommended. Assessment. The Void Collective poses no immediate threat to Coalition space. Mission objective achieved. Humanity has successfully protected the Coalition from extinction. When this news was announced, something unexpected happened on every Coalition world at the same time. People began to come out of their bunkers and shelters. They looked up at the sky, and they began to cry. They cried because they were alive. They cried because the fighting was over. They cried because hope had not been false. Captain Jae-yun stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus Eternal and looked at the Coalition worlds spread out before her. She could see cities beginning to light up again. She could see factories coming back to life. She could see the tiny lights of millions and billions of beings beginning to move around again. No longer running, no longer hiding, simply living. She opened her communication channel to the Coalition. "This is Captain Han Jae-yun of the Prometheus Eternal," she said. "I want to say something to all the people of the Coalition who are listening. What you have experienced over these past months has been terrible. You have lost friends and family. You have lost homes and worlds. Nothing I can say will make those losses okay. But I want you to know that it is over. The darkness that you were facing is broken. You will rebuild. You will recover. And we will help you. Humanity is not leaving again. Humanity is staying. We are staying because you are our family. You are the descendants of humans, changed by time and space, but still family. And families protect each other." When these words were broadcast across the Coalition, people stopped in the streets. They listened. And in their hearts, something shifted. They understood that the galaxy had changed. Something old had returned. Something powerful had chosen to stand with them, and they understood that the universe would never be quite the same again. The war was over. A new age was beginning, and humanity was no longer a legend. Humanity was real.